Okay, so I just wanted to make a quick little video kind of discussing, like, how map design affects CTF as a game mode in TF2, just because I think there's potential behind it that is just kind of not reached because of the way maps are designed. And I think, I mean, in all likelihood, nothing's gonna come of this video, but I think even just casually, there are ways to improve CTF to make it like a lot more engaging. And most people do kind of just use CTF as a DM game mode, but I think, yeah, I do think there's like potential to it. So, yeah, I just kind of wanted to go over that, but you know, as you can see, we're on 2 Fort, and this this map, 2 Fort and its consequences have been a disaster for the CTF mapping scene. 2 Fort is like very kind of, I mean, everybody knows the issues with 2 Fort. It's like a very Quake style. It's even tighter than most Quake maps, actually. You know, there's really just not enough space to do anything. The intel is just so far away, and it's behind such tight areas and stuff. And that's something that I think is really prevalent in CTF maps just because of 2 Fort. Kind of similar to, like, Viaduct's effect on the way that Koth is mapped a lot. Just that everybody seems to want to make a Quake-style map where, like, you have this kind of large, like, really open mid with a big bridge on it, and then there's, like, a lower area with a flank route, and there's, like, a sniper bridge, that kind of thing. And I think that absolutely doesn't work because TF2 doesn't have Quake's movement. Because I think the difference here is that, like, in Quake Team Fortress, you could have just, like, bee-hopped through here and, like, gone past anybody that's trying to stop you and they have to chase you. Whereas in TF2, you know, you have classes that are designed specifically to stop people from just running directly past them and stuff. And, things are a bit slower in TF2 in general, so it's a lot easier to, like, deny that sort of thing. And again, with the intel, it's so fucking far away. Like, if I, like, say I come out of blue spawn, it's gonna take me, like, more than a minute to get to the intel room and get back. It's just so long. And the intel room is so far out of the way that it's really, it feels like the idea that you should place the intel far away from your spawn room, but, like, taken to the nth degree, because this is just absurd. This is so far away. It's kind of, you know, it's bordering on, like, comedic, really. And then it takes all this time for you to take it and then get back. And it just makes everything so slow, on top of the fact that it's just so difficult to get there to begin with. You know, it's just so long. So I think, because of the way 2 Fort kind of adheres to the old Team Fortress Classic map design that really has, like, more kind of Quakey movement, this really just does not work at all. This doesn't fit at all in TF2. And as time kind of goes on, you can kind of see little improvements to it. But yeah, as a starting point, 2 Fort is not good at all. But I mean, that's kind of to be expected because it's a launch map. So, you know. But yeah. So, in order to kind of talk about, like, the upsides and downsides in different CTF maps, I'm actually gonna go out of release order and talk about doublecross first, because I feel like doublecross is kind of the second kind of phase of like CTF map design. So, I will talk about turbine, but I feel like it's, to make the point that I want to make, I think it's probably better that I talk about doublecross first. So doublecross has similar issues to 2 Fort. They're not as pronounced, but they're still there. Mid is still, like, not very complex. It's kind of just a straight line. It feels like it's going for what Badlands mid is, but I think it's just not interesting at all. There's not really much height variation here. There's not really much room to play around like this truck and these crates like there is with the trains on Badlands. There's not much space to move. Like, if I fall down here, I just die. And this lower area isn't really interesting to play on, because there's nothing happening down here other than that health. There's the return of the 2-fort sniper balcony. This is a bit crazy, and so is this. You can stand up here and get a good sight line as well, but for some reason you can't stand on this roof. And that's a thing that I think would have made this mid a lot more interesting. You know, because you can like get a scout up there or a soldier, and you can like do stuff off of that. But no such luck. So we kind of see again like this Quake style map design where you have, it's actually 2 bridges this time. 2 bridges. There's kind of like a main entrance. There's a secret entrance here, and then there's like a flank underneath. You know, it's very. Even if mid has more space, and like this area here has more space, it's still very like kind of quakey. The lobby, again, it's slightly improved. I mean, there's more space here, and it's more difficult to spawn camp because of the positioning of spawn, but it still kind of suffers from the issues that that 2-fort's lobby has anyway. And the flag cap room is just awful. This is possibly one of the worst in TF2. It's so tight, it's so easy to just shut this out, you know. You have 3 entrances. These 2 are basically the same, and this is just a choke. You know, you place 1 sentry down and it can deny so much in here. It's basically like impossible to enter. But I think the one thing that this map does get right with the flag is that taking it back is not that difficult once you get it. Well, it's not that long. It's still fairly easy to get killed with it, but you know, it's nowhere near as long of a distance as it is on 2-fort. So I think you know, it encourages people to like play a bit more aggressively and like get right back in there. So, yeah, I mean, you can see kind of a bit of improvement to the Quake map style, but just generally, I think, you know, there's not much room to do things in a lot of places. The intel room is still horrible. We're still doing this thing with the lower flank where, you know, nobody successfully pushes in through here. Where are you supposed to go? You can only really, I mean, you can drop through here, and that's kind of an option. But then you're immediately put on low ground, and people can see where you are because of the intel compass and because of your outline. So it's really not that good. It's still really difficult to take the flag. But it's definitely an improvement over 2-fort, I would say. I do think that this kind of like a bridge mid can be interesting if it's done like Badlands. But on doublecross, it just really is not that interesting. So. Oh, turbine. So this is usually the CTF map people point to as like sucking horribly if they don't talk about 2-fort. This is generally considered, I think, either the worst or the second worst. But I have a bit of a hot take here. I do think that Turbine is probably the most competitively viable CTF map that's currently in TF2, like officially. I would say that over the landfall, I think, but I don't know if it's that much of a difference. But Turbine is kind of horrible. I mean, mid looks like a TF2 mid, so there's that. I mean, this kind of bears resemblance to like Granary. I'm not a fan of this high ground up here. It feels super weird and promotes like sniper and stuff. But I think in general, this is probably one of the better CTF mids, even if it's like relatively flat and boring. And this is actually the pro version of Turbine, so there's like additional kind of exits around here. But you get in towards the flag area, and things just become immediately so much worse. I mean, this area, we're getting back into Quake map design pretty much. This is still like wider than 2-fort, but it's still not good. You know, the way turbine is played, you don't as often get to play mid, because the strategy is that you take mid and you hold it, and then you just send like a couple of guys in through here to kind of get a pick or get a kill or something so they can take the intel. It's not, you don't play as a team, just because this choke is so difficult to push through that, like, why would you bother when you can just like stop people from coming in and force them to play back. So it's really not as fun because you're not being encouraged to get in big team fights. The geometry isn't interesting. So usually you'll be standing in here and there'll be people like standing towards the back or in the intel room trying to block you from coming in. Every entrance to the intel room is really tight. And the one that's not as tight is the one where you have to walk past their spawn. And I think Turbine is really just ruined by this back area with the intel, because I do think that mid is like okay. I think it's probably the best CTF mid, but the intel area just like ruins everything. The choke in the intel area. This vent really just does not do all that much. In this version as well, it's really long and there's just nothing going on here. So like if you go through here, like you're not going to be fighting anyone. That's nobody's here. Why would you be here? Unless somebody sees you like in this doorway, there's not really much reason to like enter. So there's not really much interesting happening over there. But it sucks because most of the gameplay ends up revolving around this flag room instead of around like playing team fights and stuff. And this flag room is just not interesting at all. And it really just ruins what otherwise could be a somewhat decent map. Okay, so landfall I think is what a lot of people would consider to be like quote unquote the good CTF map. You know, if Turbine is a demonstration of how a flag cap area can just completely ruin a map if it sucks, then I think Landfall kind of shows the opposite, where, you know, if it's good, you can kind of get away with having, like, slightly bad areas. You know, this cap area is fairly decent. You can't stack NGs as well, even despite the fact that spawn is, like, right here. It's a bit more difficult to get so many that it becomes really easy to hold it. Just because there's a lot of places that you can kind of get a sentry from. You know, I can corner peek it here, or like I can spam it from this house, or I can spam it from here. You know, usually if you're here, there's like a fight that you kind of have to take here, and then once you get rid of them, you can spam the sentry of it. It leaves you with kind of room to push in that a lot of other CTF maps, especially, I think this is the only one where the intel room has an open choke here. So there's lots of room to kind of, you know, stop sentries and stuff. So, but I think otherwise the rest of the map is really like not super good. I wouldn't say it's as fun as Turbine. I mean, this choke here feels really boring because it's all super flat and the only height variation is to this side. So there's not really much you can do with this. I mean, you can kind of get a bit of a sightline here, but there's not a lot of interesting things about this area, I think. You know, if you stand here, it's like a really tight space. If you go inside, you can't fight people down there. If you're down here, there's really just not much going on. And mid, again, mid kind of like Turbine, it bears similarities to a 5CP or like King of the Hill mid, I think. Especially with like this tree that kind of acts as a spire. But at the same time, I think this tree is kind of the biggest problem with landfall mid, because it reduces the space around it by so much. On this low ground, I don't think there's an area other than this entrance here where you have, like, more than 300 hammer units of space. Like, more than 300 square hammer units. It's just so tight down here. And I mean, in casual CTF, that's fine, because like people don't really care. But I think to make like a really good CTF map, you don't want to be having that sort of thing. You kind of just want to make the mid similar to 5CP. And this upper area, you know, you can stand here and you can spam down at things, but it's really awkward, because if someone is standing on the other side of this tree, I can't see them, I can't take their fight. You know, you have to go all the way around, at which point they may have also gone all the way around. And you can only spam this area easy, like this area right in front of you, otherwise you have to go around like this. And I'm playing as scout, so it's a lot easier, but if you're playing as soldier, it's a bit more difficult. Like if I start here, and then once I'm up here, it takes a second for me to look around to the other side, because I can't rocket jump to the other side and I can't walk straight across. So yeah, I would say this lobby as well, it's kind of Badlands-esque, but it feels really tight. All of these places that you can stand in are like tiny, barring this exit here. And it's all like little chokes and doorways and stuff. If you're standing in here and you see someone else, you really don't have that much room to move. This, I think, is my favorite part of the map. This exit here, just because it's similar to Saw on Snakewater, and like I like Saw on Snakewater. But other than that, the lobby really isn't like that stellar. But just because of the intel room, the rest of the map is kind of saved from being bad. Because people don't care as much if mid is bad, as long as you can actually play the objective. And obviously, if we got like a sudden increase in the quality of CTF intel rooms, then I think people would probably want like better mids and stuff. But as it is now, it's you can kind of get away with it. It's much more important that your intel room is good and people can actually play the objective than that you make a mid good and then just kind of leave the intel room to suck. You know, it's you're kind of forced to play the intel room and take like team fights here just because mid is not good. I mean, you have like the initial kind of mid fight, and then you only ever refight mid when there's equal player numbers, I think, because usually one team's gonna have less players and then they just kind of push in onto this intel. But people who play CTF just like regularly kind of don't do that. They kind of just play mid anyway. But if you were to make a CTF map where you wanted people to actively play the objective, I think it would be more interesting to have it so that mid and the intel room are areas you can play, just so that it kind of has like that tug of war kind of back and forth dynamic that like 5CP and King of the Hill have, that make those so fun. But landfall in general is really not that bad, I think. So this is CTF Atrophy. This is a custom competitive CTF map. It was played in CEVO 6's, I don't know what season, but when it was played in CEVO, everybody kind of like hated it. But it has this mechanic. Well, it has two mechanics actually. And the first one is that your intel moves on this cart towards mid and eventually stops here. The second mechanic is that the intel cap zone is over here, and this door closes if your intel is not on your cart. So your intel has to be home, and you have to have that intel in that capture zone to cap. And I think overall, Atrophy is not bad. Mid kind of bears similarities to doublecross. You know, this is like the bridge, that's kind of like the lower bridge. There's like the buildings here, but you can actually stand on them. You know, there's a bit of a balcony here, but it's not as good for sniper. You mostly just like make bombs off of this, like make bomb plays. But I think Atrophy is an above average quality CTF map. The intel moving towards mid encourages team fights, because sooner or later they're gonna get there, so you want to take mid so that you can either push in and take it, or so that you can defend your intel and take theirs once it gets there. And that, I think, is quite a good thing about the map, is that it encourages teams to play together, because you're going to be constantly doing mid fights. But then there's kind of a bit of a contrast here, where the mechanic with your door being closed when you hold the intel, and I'll just demonstrate real quick. So if I go to red side and I take their intel, the cart stops, and then you'll see if I go around to their intel room, the door's closed. So red can't cap right now because I'm holding their intel. So the thing with that is that it encourages you to send the person holding the intel over here and then get a flank play on somebody. You're not being forced to fight each other. You're being forced to sit there and wait for someone to die, which I think really ruins this map quite a lot. Just through the inclusion of that single mechanic, I think if it was gone, then the quality of this map would be so much higher. You know, I think people would enjoy it so much more, just because you don't have that dumb restriction that, if you have the flag, they can't cap, but if they also have the flag, you can't cap. So it just ends up with these stalemate situations where both teams have the flag, but nobody wants to make a move, which is kind of the issue with CTF to begin with. You're kind of fixing it a bit and then just reintroducing the issue, which I think is really not that good. You know, and it's such a small change. There's just a tiny change to how the map functions just completely ruins it. And that's just a small change to the rule set. So I think you have to be really careful about how you go about these sorts of things, because you obviously don't want to ruin the map. This is almost good, and I feel like if it did not have that mechanic where your intel has to be home to cap, people would like it way more. You know, people would really enjoy themselves. But as it is now, it's really just annoying. And it's just really boring once both flags are on the middle, because that just happens. Okay, so this is CTF Wildfire. This is the winner of TF2 Maps' competitive CTF contest. I believe it scored like 85 points out of 100 or something. It was pretty high, and you can kind of see the reasons that this map is good already. This intel room resembles like a typical kind of 5CP mid. You know, it's got like the spire here, or 5CP second, I should say. There's the spire here that's kind of popular in 5CP. It's very reminiscent of Badlands. There's kind of the lower ground here. You can get onto the spire and you kind of have to go around, but there's also like a flank around it, kind of. You know, it's just very similar to Badlands Spire. And I think that helps a lot, just because, you know, I can't put a sentry here and deny everything. Like, I can put a sentry on this roof, and it watches these two entrances, but this one just sucks anyway. And this one, it's relatively easy to just corner peek out of. Like, you can kind of just do this. And if I stand here, I can't be hit by it, and I can see it all the way over there, so I can stand in this choke and spam at it if I need to. So it's not as easy to defend. It's really open, so you can make good like bomb plays on it. You know, I as a soldier can jump up quite high. If I'm over here, I can do that. If I'm over here, I can do that. You know, there's a lot of room for movement. And there's just good avenues to attack from, other than this bit. This bit's so tight, and right in front of spawn, that I think it'll probably get you killed coming out of there. And I do really like this intel area, even though it's kind of just Badlands. I think it's really good. Just because it's so easy to, like, get in, and it's not, like, super easy to just completely deny the intel. And then I think once you get to the other areas around the map, like, this area here, this little, like, lobby bit, or, like, choke or whatever, it's fine. It's nothing stellar, but it's fine. And then you have this spot here where it's just so tight, and you go into mid, and it's so small. And there's really not much happening here. You know, this flank, it's so tight. You know, you go through here, it's so tight. And despite that, this is still, I would say, like, a pretty good CTF map. So, again, you can get away with having a good last. And especially with this kind of small mid, it promotes, again, taking team fights on the intel. Because, you know, it's not going to be easy to get in there through those tight chokes and stuff. So you really want to be sending everyone in. You know, I would say this is a good map. Even despite some of its flaws, especially with mid, I think, just because it's so tiny. But, I would still say that it's a good CTF map. It's definitely a lot more interesting than the other ones. You know, it's easier to, like, make plays for the flag. It's a bit more, like, there's a bit more of the back and forth. And there's also, I believe, the flag returns when you touch it. So if I go and I take red's flag, and I'll just drop it on this roof. And then if you tap it, it gets reset. And that kind of just helps to make it so that you don't have to, like, hold your flag once it drops on the ground. You can kind of just take it and immediately take it back if they die and they leave it too far behind. So it kind of helps, again, to promote that back and forth, because it's so easy to just recover your flag and then you can kind of just immediately aggress after that. You can way more easily just capitalize on any picks that you get in a fight. And I really think that's something that should be encouraged. Okay, so this is CTF Vitalism. This was played in Highlander a while ago. I believe people didn't actually hate it all that much. From what I've seen, people didn't seem to think this was too bad. And I think a lot of the reasoning for that has to do with the mechanics of the map, because this has the kind of atrophy you can't cap if your intel isn't home mechanic that you see in a lot of arena shooters. But the positioning of the actual cap areas is right here. If I have that intel, I have to go here to cap. I'll demonstrate real quick. So if I go and I take that intel, you'll be able to see that now that cap zone has closed, but my cap zone is here. And I think this is a really, really nice little thing to have on your map, just because it kind of, the positioning of the intel room promotes more full team fights, because you have to be taking this ground to cap. It's not like atrophy where, like, oh, the cap zone is here and I just have to wait for the rest of my team to win that fight so I can take it in. This is the place you're fighting over. So if you win, you can cap immediately, and it's very likely that you're going to be playing around this area anyway, because it's in the middle of your map. It's in the middle of the map where other people are. So I think that's a really nice way to promote making teams come face to face and fight each other. And I think what you'd see on Vitalism, and I don't know if that's more because it's a Highlander map, or if that's just because that's how CTF functions, but what would happen is, like, they'd have the hold mid and send flank into cap kind of mentality, where you have one person cap and then come back here. And a lot of the time what you'd see is that they'd have a spy with your intel, and then you would have like a heavy or something with their intel, and then they would actually both fight in this room, and then go and cap. And I'm pretty sure vitalism. I'll check real quick. I'm pretty sure vitalism doesn't have the flag return on touch thing, but it returns really quickly. So if you get that kill, it's not that long before you can cap it, which I think is a very good thing. It just makes things feel a bit more frantic. It definitely made the game a lot faster paced. In all of the matches I saw, it wasn't like, oh, you were getting one cap in every 30 minutes and it would be like a 1-0, and the team that got that one like initial cap or whatever, or like even the cap came in like really late in the game, like that team wins. It was more that like there were constantly like caps happening, you know, and it felt entertaining to watch, and I'm pretty sure it was entertaining to play because it seems like people didn't mind the map too much. And I think this kind of formula, not necessarily the map being as wide, but just this kind of format where you have the cap zone on mid, and the intel returns quickly, or like you tap to return it. I think that has a lot of potential competitively, especially in 6v6. It would promote like that back and forth, teams fighting each other all the time. It would just make things be a bit more crazy. So just to close out this video, I just wanted to say a couple things. On CTF, most of my points about CTF are geared more towards 6v6 than Highlander, just because I think CTF has the potential to kind of have a similar feel to like Koth and 5CP, where you have that constant back and forth, you know, there's like plays happening all the time, there's constant aggression, that sort of thing. And I know that it's more than likely that nothing's gonna happen from this video, just because it's quite late in TF2's competitive life cycle. People don't want to try new things as often. You know, 5CP has tried and tested, Koth has tried and tested, and CTF has infamously just not been that good competitively. But still, I think that there's a lot of potential for it in 6s especially. In Highlander, maybe, I imagine it would probably just be like a kind of Highlander 5CP situation, where Highlander CTF games are just long, and people don't like it as much. So I'd be more tempted to say that it would fit in 6v6. But I think a lot of these points, even in casual, work quite well if you want to make a map that like the general TF2 audience that isn't like those super hardcore two-fort enthusiasts that like only play on CTF on like community servers and stuff, and they only do silly things, and you want to like draw in people who kind of just like queue for casual and want to just like fuck about and play the game. I think that could be really beneficial for them. I think that could be something that makes them like CTF, because it would kind of be a bit similar to like 5CP and casual, and obviously 5CP and casual is not as good as it is competitively, just because of its tendency to stalemate. But I think still this would be a lot better for casual. Just for like general casual audiences over the already existing CTF maps. So yeah, thanks for watching. I do hope this video helps someone with like the design of a map. If not, then it's whatever. I just kind of like rambling about this sort of thing. But yeah, alright, see ya.